The microphone fed back with sharp squeal as I stepped onto the stage, right in the middle of the white coat ceremony. Cameras flashed. The banner behind the podium said, "Welcome, new doctors." My ex-wife, Ada, stood front row in her new coat, smiling for the dean and the board and the chief medical officer, who had slid his hand around her waist like she belonged to him. I didn't come in a suit. I came in the same Navy work jacket I had worn every night delivering food, the jacket with oil stains and a torn pocket where tips used to fall through. In my left hand, I held a dented lunchbox. In my right, a white envelope with a red string tie. "Security," someone barked. "It's okay," the dean said into the mic, trying to sound calm. He didn't know me, but Ada did. Her smile died. Her eyes asked me to stop, to turn around, to let her new life stay clean. I set the lunchbox on the podium so the audience could see the stickers on it. Rent due dates, grocery lists, call to bank back. Then I opened the envelope and took out paper after paper. Bank transfers, receipts, screenshots of messages, copies of a scholarship application where she swore she was single and unsupported, and a draft of a research paper matching another doctor's work word for word. "This," I said, my voice steady, "is the cost of one white coat." Gasps rolled across the auditorium like a wave. On the big screen behind me, the slides I had emailed ahead of time to all staff started changing one by one, as if an invisible hand was turning the pages of our life. Me sleeping in a delivery car seat between shifts, Ada's message from the morning she passed her final exams. "I'm a doctor now. I need someone on my level. Don't contact me again." A payment proof for her exam fees for my second job, and a photo of Ada and the chief medical officer at a private dinner 2 months before she left. "Turn it off. Turn it off," the dean shouted. Too late. The next slide showed the line in her scholarship form where she had written, "No spouse. No financial support." The chief medical officer's face went red. He lunged toward the projector table. Ada grabbed his sleeve and whispered something fast, her lips shaking. The audience rustled louder, nurses pointing, interns whispering, reporters raised phones. I slid a small voice recorder out of the lunchbox and placed it beside the mic. "This is a recording from a night. She told me she needed space until her oath. She said, 'You were just a stepping stone. Please don't make this ugly.'" A security guard reached me. He gripped my elbow. I did not pull away. I leaned toward the mic, so my voice filled the hall like thunder. "Stepping stones don't drown," I said. "They rise when the river lies." Then, from the envelope, I pulled one last sheet and lifted it high. It had a hospital logo and 3 signatures. The hall went silent. Even the guard's hand loosened. "Shall I read who signed this?" I asked, my eyes on Ada. "Or do you want to tell them yourself?" Ada's mouth opened. Her eyes closed. The chief medical officer took a step back. The dean reached for the paper, and I read the first name. The hall exploded. I used to count time by alarms. 1 to wake for the bakery at 4 a.m., 1 to leave for the delivery shift at 6 p.m., 1 to nap for 20 minutes. Face pressed to the car window, cheek warm from old sunlight. When you work 2 jobs, time stops being a circle. It becomes a straight rope you hold with both hands so you don't fall. On the morning the rope slipped, home smelled like burnt toast and menthol rub. I had come from the night route, feet buzzing, arms stiff, heart still running. Ada sat at the table in my faded university hoodie, hair in a big scarf, a mug of ginger tea between her palms. She was studying. She was always studying. The house was small and kind. The kettle clicked like a clock. "It's exam week," she mumbled without looking up. "Quiet, please." I wanted to say, "I know." I wanted to say, "I am proud of you." I wanted to say, "We are almost there," but my mouth chose the wrong thing. It said, "Rent is due tomorrow." It said, "I took an extra shift." It said, "I'll be late for your review class." She squeezed the bridge of her nose. "You don't have to go to every class with me." "I like walking you." I said. "You like feeling useful," she replied, soft but sharp. The kettle clicked again. I turned it off. We were not fighting. We were tired. When you are tired, even love sounds like complaint. I moved our little jar of coins and stuffed 3 crumpled notes inside. I had a habit. Every time I got a tip, I wrote what it paid for on a small sticker and pressed it onto my lunchbox. Tonight's sticker said, Ada's Anatomy flashcards. A week ago, Wi-Fi for exam videos. 2 months ago, exam fees, do not forget. The box wore our life the way a suitcase wears airport tags. I kiss her cheek. I'll sleep now. Wake me at noon. I'll cook jollof for you before your study group. Okay, she said. She did not look up, but when I reached the bedroom door, she added, thank you. I slept heavy and woke to the sound of her voice. At first, I smiled because it sounded happy. Then I heard the words, I'm ready. After today, I'm free. Free. The word tasted like a lemon in my mouth. I lay still listening. The wall between the bedroom and living room was thin. A man's voice came from her phone, low and smooth. You know what we discussed. After your last clinical, we make it official. She laughed quietly. You're bad. Ambitious, the man corrected. We are both ambitious. You deserve better. You deserve a doctor's life. I sat up, my heartbeat suddenly loud in my ear. My feet found the floor. The room was hot. I opened the window and stared at the neighbor's mango tree like it could explain something. Ada ended the call. Then she stood at the bedroom door, surprised to see me awake, her hand still holding the phone. Who was that? I asked. My study partner, she said too fast. Which one? I asked. Why are you awake? You need to rest. You still have work tonight. My tongue felt thick. I'll make the jollof. No need, she said. I'm eating out with the group. We looked at each other for a moment that stretched like a rubber band. If you pull a band too far, it does not snap back. It breaks. I cooked anyway. The smell of tomato and pepper filled the house. I set her portion aside and wrote a note. For after you come back. Good luck. When you don't know what to say, food is a way to speak without making things worse. She left for the hospital with her backpack and a smile that did not touch her eyes. I washed the pot. I put the coins in the jar. I changed into my delivery polo. The sun moved. Time climbed forward because it never learns how to pause. At 3 p.m., while waiting at a traffic light, my phone buzzed. Ada had sent a selfie in a white coat with her classmates, all grinning, arms thrown around each other, stethoscopes like silver snakes around their necks. Under it, she wrote, I did it. I typed, I knew you would. I didn't press send. I stared at our bank app instead. The balance blinked at me, 2,700 Nigerian nairas. The rent reminder sat over it like a red flag. At 4:52 p.m., my phone buzzed again. A new message from Ada. I'm a doctor now. I need someone on my level. Don't contact me again. I laughed. The sound that came out of me was not a laugh. It was a broken plate hitting tile. I called. She declined. I called again. She blocked. I parked. The car felt suddenly too small to hold my body. The world outside kept moving. Okada riders, children in uniforms, the man who sold oranges cutting peel into a perfect spiral. People walked past my window, and none of them knew that my life had just been split into before and after like 2 halves of fruit that would never grow together again. I did what people do when they are hurt and proud and poor. I went back to work. Orders don't care about heartbreak. The app pinged. I drove. I carried hot bags upstairs. I smiled. Enjoy your meal. My smile felt like a bandage over a hole. By midnight, I had done 12 deliveries. The last house had fairy lights and a stone path. A woman in a silk robe took the bag and tipped me with a pity face that made me want to scream. I said, thank you. I meant, please, I don't want her eyes. At 1:10 a.m., in a dark parking lot outside a pharmacy, my phone lit again. Not Ada, a number I didn't know. Mr. Tunn. A crisp voice asked when I answered. Yes, this is the hospital. Dr. Ada requested to remove you as her emergency contact. We need a new name from her. She said we should confirm with you that you understand. The rope I had been holding all day slipped. "I understand," I said. My voice was very calm. My hands were shaking so hard that the phone clicked against my teeth. I hung up. I put my forehead on the steering wheel. I did not cry. There's a kind of pain that is too dry for tears. It sits in your chest like a small, hard stone. That night, I did not go home. I drove to the river and parked where the water made a soft sound. I opened my dented lunchbox. I pressed a fresh sticker on it. Phone bill for study apps. My hand stopped halfway. I stared at the words. Then I peeled the sticker up and stuck it on the inside lid. Facing me, I wanted to see the things I had done. I wanted to remember. When dawn came, the sky was pale and tender like the inside of a fruit. I drove home and slept without dreams. 3 days passed. I kept moving, because if you stand still when your heart is broken, it finds you in the open and hits you again. On the 4th day, my boss at the bakery handed me an envelope. "Your wife came by," he said awkwardly. "She left this for you." Inside was a single sheet of paper, a lawyer's letter. Clean words, sharp lines. It said we had been incompatible for some time. It said she would vacate her name from our lease. It said she would appreciate me moving out to avoid awkward overlap because a colleague had offered her a spare room close to the hospital. Under the lawyer's letter, folded small, was a sticky note in Ada's handwriting. "Don't make this ugly. Be a gentleman." That was the moment the rope burned my hands. I felt something cold and exact take shape inside me. It was not hate. Hate is loud and messy. This was a quiet plan. Plans are colder than hate. They do not shout. They sharpen. I started by cleaning. I cleaned the kitchen, then the bedroom, then the desk where Ada used to study. I picked up her flashcards and put them in a neat stack. Under them, I found a form stamped with a hospital emblem, an application for a special scholarship. My eyes skipped lines until a sentence hooked me by the throat. I certify that I am single and unsupported, receiving no financial help. There was her signature. There was the date. It was the same week I had sold my phone to pay for her lab coat. The stone in my chest turned. I took a photo. Then I kept looking. In the desk drawer, I found a small notebook with a list. Dinner with CMO, 7 p.m., mentor meeting, shadowing opportunity, keep private. The CMO, Chief Medical Officer. I had seen his face on a hospital poster, smiling wide like a man who had never worried about rent. I sat back on her chair and held the notebook in both hands. The room was very quiet. Outside, a boy kicked a football against the wall. Thud, thud, thud. Each sound said a word. Find, out, why. That became my new rope. I went to the bank and printed 6 months of statements. I highlighted every payment that had helped Ada stay in school: exam fees, textbooks, bus passes, shared data plans. I counted transfers to her account. I counted receipts from the bakery and delivery app. Numbers don't lie, even when people do. The numbers told a story of 2 jobs braided together to hold up one dream. At night, in the car, I listened to the voice notes she had sent me over the last year. "I'm so tired. I'll make you proud. Someday we'll laugh about these days." Then I listened to the last message. "I'm a doctor now. I need someone on my level." The tone had changed from sugar to glass. I saved the messages. I saved screenshots. I bought a small voice recorder from a shop that smelled like dust and old batteries. The man behind the counter said, "For meetings?" "For memory," I said. The first real clue came by accident. On a rainy Thursday, I waited outside the hospital to hand over a delivery bag. Doctors and nurses hurried past like flying ants after storm. Then I saw Ada. She walked under the canopy with the chief medical officer. He leaned close. He said something into her ear that made her half smile, half wince. She reached for his wrist. He stopped her hand with 2 fingers. It was a small move, intimate, practiced. I pressed the recorder in my pocket and moved closer, pretending to check my order number. Their words came to me in pieces, like a song through a thin wall. "Board will love your paper. We keep everything tidy. No need to mention him. Him. The word hit me like a thrown stone. Him was me. I followed at a distance. They turned into a side door marked staff only. A security man blocked me. Delivery is around back. I'm waiting for someone, I said. You cannot wait here. I left, but I had seen enough to know the shape of it. The board, the paper, the tidy lies. At home that night, I sat with my lunchbox and my envelope. I began to build the story I would tell the day I cut the rope and let it snap back into their hands. I drafted an email to the hospital compliance office with evidence attached. I did not send it. Not yet. Not until I had the last piece. The last piece came from someone I did not expect. Saad, a nurse who would always smile at me when I waited for Ada during long study nights. She found me by the vending machines and put a cup of coffee in my hand, like a small kindness you give a person standing in the rain. I heard, she said softly. I'm fine, I said, which was a lie people like to hear. She looked at my face for a long second and did not accept the lie. They talk, she said. People talk too much. This place is loud even when it's quiet. I didn't ask her to explain. She did anyway, because sometimes truth wants air. Be careful, Saad said. The CMO, he is not just a name on a door. He helps people, but it is always a trade. Your wife, she stopped. I'm sorry, Dr. Ada. She got special hours, special letters, special doors. Doors open for smart people, I said. Some doors open because someone holds them, she replied. And some doors close on the person who paid for key. I swallowed. Thank you. She hesitated, then added, if you want the board to listen, they don't listen to pain. They listen to paper. I have paper, I said, tapping my envelope. Good. Get more. That night, I did not sleep. I wrote a list like Ada used to. Scholarship form, copy, bank statements, highlight, voice notes, transcribe, photos, organize, research draft, compare. My hands moved calmly. Inside me, waves crashed. In the morning, I visited the library and used a dusty computer to pull a research article Saad had hinted about. I read the words until they burned in my eyes. Then I compared them to a draft I had found in Ada's files. Paragraphs matched like twins wearing different shirts. I printed both. I put them in the envelope. The envelope grew heavy, like it was learning to be a fist. I knew then what my revenge would be. It would not be a scream. It would be a door that closed behind them with an official lock. It would be the slow, cold click of rules. It would be the truth, walking on paper feet, into a room where people believed they were too clean to be touched by mud. I waited for the right day. The ceremony when the board, the press, the donors, and the new doctors would crowd into one room to clap for each other. I ironed my navy jacket. I packed a lunchbox. I tied the red string on the envelope like I was sealing a wound. And when the day came, I walked into the hall, climbed the steps, and put my hands on the mic. Shall I read who signed this? I asked. My voice did not shake. The first name on the paper was not Ada's. It was the chief medical officer's. And the second was the dean's. The room did not breathe. I let the silence stretch, the way a fisherman lets a line run before snapping the hook. The chief medical officer's jaw clenched so hard I could see the muscle jump near his ear. The dean reached for the paper like he thought he could pluck the words back before they flew into the crowd. Too late. The whispers were already rippling through the rows of white coats and press suits. Did he say the dean? Signed what? What is happening? The projector behind me still cycled through my slides. Photos of receipts, late-night text messages. The scholarship form with Ada's neat handwriting swearing she had no financial support. The truth was on the wall, as plain as paint. I leaned into the mic. The third name, I said slowly, is the woman you are about to clap for, Dr. Ada Okonkwo. Ada's had dropped like someone had pulled the strings, holding it up. The chief medical officer turned to her, his lips moving in words I couldn't hear over the growing noise. A few reporters were already pushing toward the stage, their phones up, recording. Security! The dean barked again, but no one moved. Even the guard holding my elbow was frozen, caught between his job and his curiosity. I looked at Ada. Really looked. The girl I had once walked to lectures in the rain was gone. The woman standing there now was made of glass and angles, polished to impress people who live in offices with carpeted floors. But under the polish, her eyes were wide and wet. Not sorry, scared. I closed the envelope, slipped it back into my lunchbox, and whispered into the mic, so the whole room had to lean in to hear. You climbed over me to get here. Now let's see if you can stand without me. The guard finally tugged my arm, steering me toward the exit. But before I stepped off the stage, I saw Ada's lips move. 2 words. Don't. Please. I didn't stop. I didn't even look back. 2 years earlier, Ada had been a different kind of tired. We had been sitting on the bare floor of our first apartment, a single bulb swinging overhead, eating noodles from the same pot, because we didn't own enough plates. She had been buried in her notes, reciting medical terms I couldn't pronounce, while I tried to figure out how many hours I could work before my bakery boss started suspecting I was living in the delivery van. I'm going to be a doctor, she'd said, her eyes bright even though she hadn't slept properly in days. One day, people will know my name. They will, I had promised, holding my fork like a toast. And when they do, I'll tell them I knew you when you burned noodles. She'd laughed. Back then, her laugh came easily. We had agreed on a plan. I'd take the extra hours, pay the bills, keep the lights on. She'd focus on passing every exam the first time. No retakes, no delays. Once I'm earning, she said, you can rest. That promise had been my anchor. Every 4 a.m. alarm, every skipped meal, every long night in traffic, it all made sense because there was a finish line. Because I thought we were running the same race. But something changed around her 3rd year. She stopped telling me about her classes, stopped letting me walk her to campus. She started dressing differently for study groups, wearing perfume to late-night sessions. When I asked who she was meeting, she'd roll her eyes and say, you wouldn't know them. One evening, she came home with a brand-new tablet, the kind I knew we couldn't afford. A gift, she said, from a mentor. What kind of mentor buys electronics? I asked, the kind who believes in me, she replied, like I didn't. I told myself it didn't matter where it came from, as long as she kept passing her exams. But in the quiet, I felt the ground under us starting to tilt. The day I realized it was more than tilting was the day I found a letter in her bag. She had left for campus in a rush, forgetting her lunch. I grabbed her bag to bring it to her and noticed a thick envelope inside. Curiosity wasn't the reason I opened it. It was the fact that my name was on the back, written in her handwriting. Inside was a scholarship approval letter. The amount was huge, enough to cover an entire year of her tuition. At first, I smiled. Relief flooded me. This meant I could slow down, maybe drop one of the jobs. But then I read the small print. Applicant certifies they are single and unsupported. It was dated the same week I had wired my entire savings to the school for her lab fees. My stomach dropped like a lift with its cables cut. When she came home that night, flushed from whatever class or meeting she'd been to, I didn't ask about the letter. I didn't tell her I'd seen it. I wanted to see how long she'd keep it from me. She never mentioned it. That was when I started keeping my own records. Every transfer, every receipt, every note where she'd asked me for help. I bought a small black notebook and filled it like a diary of proof. At first, it felt petty. But the more I wrote, the more it felt like armor. I didn't know it yet, but that armor would save me later. And it would bury her. The week before her final exams, she was tense, jumpy. She'd vanish for hours with no explanation. When she was home, she was glued to her phone, smiling at messages she didn't share with me. One night, I heard her on a call in the bathroom, voice low but excited. After the ceremony, we can finally be public. When I asked who she'd been talking to, she said, don't be paranoid. It's just study stress. But in the reflection of the bathroom mirror, I saw her bite her lip like someone caught stealing. The day of the white coat ceremony was supposed to be the day I finally rested. Instead, it became the day I used every late night, every overtime shift, every coin I'd ever scraped together, and turned them into a weapon sharper than any knife. I didn't come to congratulate her. I came to end her. As security walked me out of the hall, People leaned over the seats to stare, some with pity, some with hunger for gossip. The reporters followed me into the corridor, shouting questions. Are you her husband? Is this about fraud? Do you have more evidence? I didn't answer. Outside, the air was bright and cold. I walked to my car, the lunchbox still under my arm, the envelope inside heavier than before. I'd planted the seed. Now I just had to wait for it to grow. But as I turned the key in the ignition, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. You've made a mistake, a man's voice said. Smooth, confident, dangerous. I didn't need to ask who it was. It was the chief medical officer. His voice slid to the phone like oil over glass. Smooth, cold, and with that quiet arrogance of a man who thought the rules bent for him. You've made a mistake, the chief medical officer repeated. I didn't reply right away. I rolled the car window halfway down, letting the noise from the street, honking Okadas, market women shouting prices, bleed into the silence between us. What kind of mistake? I finally asked. The kind, he said slowly. That can cost you more than you think. I don't know what you think you're doing, but dragging your wife, ex-wife, into the mud in front of the board? Not smart. It's not just a career on the line. You could ruin yourself. I laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. You think I'm afraid of losing something? I already lost everything. You still have your freedom, he said, voice tightening. And from what I've seen of your finances, you'd be wise to keep it. My grip tightened on the phone. Are you threatening me? I'm offering you an exit, he said. A clean one. You hand over everything you showed today. All the files, all the evidence. You disappear from her life, from my life, and I make sure you're compensated. Enough to get you back on your feet. You could even start fresh somewhere else. A bribe. He wasn't even trying to hide it. I leaned back in the seat. You want me to sell my silence. I want you to stop making noise before you get crushed under it, he said. Think it over. You have until tomorrow evening. If you decide you like breathing, meet me at the coffee shop across from St. Luke's Hospital. If you don't show, he let the sentence hang heavy. Well, things happen. The line went dead. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, the lunchbox open in front of me, the envelope beside it. The room was dim except for the light from my laptop. Every photo, every scan, every transcript I gathered stared back at me from the screen like an army of paper soldiers. He thought he could buy me. He thought I'd trade all this for a few stacks of money and the illusion of safety. But his call told me something more important. I had hit a nerve. The next morning, I decided not to meet him. Not yet. I needed more. Saad, the nurse who'd warned me about it before, was waiting near the vending machine again. She didn't even look surprised when I walked up. You stirred the hive, she said quietly. They're buzzing. Good, I said. Buzzing means they're worried. She glanced around. Worried people make mistakes. And there's something you should know. The board is having a closed meeting tomorrow. Not public. No press. They'll be talking about the ceremony incident. If you can get someone inside to hear what's said... I raised an eyebrow. You volunteering? I'm not stupid, she said, but her lips curved in a small smile. But I know someone who owes me a favor. By afternoon, I had a voice message from her contact. Muffled, hurried whispers recorded under a desk during that meeting. Embarrassment to the institution. Fraud allegations could spread if we don't act. Chief will handle it. He's already in contact with the party. The party was me. They were planning to shut me down quietly. That evening, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Ada. Her voice shook. Ton, please, can we meet? Just us. No lawyers, no threats. I'm busy. I said flatly, you don't understand. You've started something you can't control. The chief, he's not like other people. He can make you disappear. I let her words hang for a moment. Funny, I said, that's exactly what you try to do to me. Silence. Then softly, I didn't mean for it to be like this. I almost laughed again. Tomorrow, 8 p.m., I said. Same coffee shop he mentioned. You, him, and me. If either of you don't show, I go straight to the press with everything. All of it. She hesitated, then whispered, "Okay." The next day, I walked into that coffee shop with a lunchbox under my arm. The chief sat in the corner, Ada beside him, her hands twisting the edge of her sleeve. His smile was small and sharp, like a knife. "You came," he said. "I'm here to give you my answer," I said, and I set the lunchbox on the table. Slowly, I opened it. Inside wasn't the envelope. It was a small, black voice recorder. I pressed play. The sound of their own voices from the hospital corridor filled the space between us. No need to mention him. We keep everything tidy. After the ceremony, we can finally be public. Ada went pale. The chief's smile didn't move, but his eyes hardened. "You're making a mistake." I leaned forward. "No, I'm making history." And then the front door of the coffee shop opened, and walked two men in plain suits, flashing ID badges. They headed straight for our table. The two men in suits moved with the quiet precision of people who didn't need to raise their voices to get respect. "Mr. Tund?" the taller one asked. I nodded, my hand still resting on the lunchbox. "I'm Investigator Uma, and this is my partner, Investigator Hassan," he said, flashing an ID card from the State Medical Board's Internal Affairs Unit. "We'd like you to come with us. We have some questions." The chief leaned back in his chair, all fake calm. "Investigators? This is hardly the place. Dr. Oladipo." Uma cut him off without looking. "You'll be coming with us as well. We have some questions for you, too. And Dr. Ada Okonkwo." Ada's head snapped up. "Me? Why?" "Because," Hassan said evenly, "your names appear on certain documents currently under review for fraud and professional misconduct." The chief's jaw tightened. "This is absurd. This man," he jabbed a finger at me, "is a disgruntled ex-husband. He's making things up to ruin careers." Uma ignored him and turned to me. "Do you have the evidence with you, sir?" I glanced at the chief, then back at the investigators. "Every piece." Uma's gaze dropped to the lunchbox. "May we?" I slid it across the table. He opened it, glanced at the red string envelope, the voice recorder, the stack of printed documents, and nodded. "You'll both come down to our office for formal statements." Ada shot me a look, not the cold, superior look she'd worn for months, but something closer to desperation. "Don't do this." That's what her eyes were saying. I didn't blink. The ride to the Internal Affairs building was quiet, except for the sound of tires on wet road. Rain had started, tapping against the windows like impatient fingers. Ada sat beside the chief in the back of the other car, both of them staring straight ahead. I rode with Uma and Hassan. Inside, the building smelled like coffee and damp paper. They led me to a small interview room with a metal table and a recorder already set up. "We've been hearing whispers about Dr. Oladipo for a while," Uma said, flipping open a notebook. "Backroom deals, favoritism, misuse of research grants. But no one ever came forward with proof. Until now," Hassan added. I pushed the envelope toward them. "This isn't everything," I said. "I've got digital backups off-site, but this will start the fire." They went through it page by page. The scholarship form with Ada's false declaration, the bank statements showing my transfers, the side-by-side plagiarism comparison of her research draft with an existing paper. Uma whistled under his breath. "This is substantial," he said. "It's also dangerous," I replied. "They won't go quietly." Meanwhile, in another room, Ada was facing her own questions. Through the thin wall, I could hear her voice rising, defensive, then breaking. I couldn't hear the words, but the tone told me everything. She was cornered. When they brought me out for a break, I saw her in the corridor, her hands trembling as she gripped a paper cup of water. The chief was still trying to play it cool, talking low to his lawyer, but there was sweat at his temples. He caught my eye. "You think you've won," he murmured. "You just open a war you can't finish." "Maybe," I said, "but I'm not the one bleeding already." By evening, the investigators had enough to escalate. They took official possession of the documents and told me they'd be calling me in again soon. I left the building feeling lighter than I had in months. But the lightness didn't last. When I got home, my door was ajar. The lock was splintered, Inside, drawers were pulled open, paper scattered. My laptop was gone. So was my backup hard drive. Whoever had been here knew exactly what to take. On the kitchen counter sat a single object, my dented lunchbox, empty, and inside it, a note in neat handwriting. Stop, or next time, it won't be your things we take. That night, I sat in the dark, phone in hand, debating whether to call Uma, but something inside me hardened instead. If they thought they could scare me back into silence, they didn't know me at all. They had taken my evidence. But they hadn't taken the one thing I still had, the truth in my head, and the willingness to burn everything down to tell it. The only question was how far I was willing to go. And as I stared at that empty lunchbox, I realized the answer was simple. All the way. The morning after break-in, I woke up with the same feeling you get when you've been shoved in the chest. That sharp, breathless sting that lingers long after the push. I didn't go to work. I didn't even open my bakery apron or delivery bag. Instead, I sat at my table with a sheet of paper and started drawing a map. Not of streets, not of buildings, a map of people. At the top, I wrote the chief's name. Beneath it, Ada's. Then I started branching out. Board members, hospital department heads, donors, anyone whose name had been linked to them in the last 3 years. I filled in lines with what I knew, who had attended whose fundraiser, who had sat on which committee, who had signed off on whose grant. By noon, the paper looked like a spider's web, and the chief was the spider in the middle. But even spiders can be crushed if you hit the web at the right point. I called Saad. They broke into my place. I told her. Her inhale was sharp. Are you okay? I'm fine. But they took everything physical. That's bad. I almost smiled. No, that's good. It means they think it's all gone. I still had copies, not on a hard drive, but spread across email accounts I created under different names. Cloud folders I didn't know existed, and one old school method no one bothers to check anymore. Physical prints hidden in a storage locker rented under my uncle's name. You want to hit back? Saad asked. I want to hit so hard he doesn't get up again. The first move was to make him bleed publicly. I started sending select pieces of evidence to people I knew would talk. A medical journalist I'd once delivered midnight coffee to, who always tipped well and owed me a favor. A former patient of the chief's who complained about mistreatment but had been silenced. An anonymous Twitter account that specialized in exposing corruption in the health sector. No names at first, just documents. Enough to make people ask questions. Enough to make the hospital PR team panic. By the second day, hashtags were trending. Hashtag Doctorgate. Hashtag White Coat Scandal. On the third day, the chief called me. You think you're clever, he said, his voice low. Dangerous. I don't think, I replied. I know. You're playing with fire, Tund. Good. I want the whole thing to burn. He hung up. That evening, Ada showed up at my door. She looked different. Less polished, her makeup gone, her hair in a messy bun like when we were still in that first apartment. She didn't wait for me to invite her in. Why are you doing this? She asked. I leaned on the counter. You really don't know? Her eyes glistened. I made a mistake. You made a choice. I cut in over and over again. And every time it wasn't me you chose. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she whispered, he won't stop, Tund. You think you've got him on the ropes, but he'll destroy you. I studied her face. There was fear there, yes, but also something else. Guilt. You came here for a reason, I said. Say it. She hesitated. There's something you don't know. Something that could finish him. But if I tell you, he'll know it came from me. I folded my arms. Then you have to decide who you're more afraid of, him or the truth. She stayed silent for a long time. Then she took a deep breath. He's been paying off members of the licensing board, she said quietly. Cash. In envelopes. To look the other way on malpractice cases. I've seen it. That was bigger than anything I had. Bigger than scholarship fraud. Bigger than plagiarism. If I could prove it, he wouldn't just lose his job. He'd lose his freedom. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Because I can't sleep, she said. Because I'm tired of pretending I don't hear the things he says about you. And she swallowed. Because I loved you once. Her voice cracked on the last word. She turned and walked out before I could respond. I sat there in the quiet for a long time, her words still in the air. Then I started a new list, places and times where those payoffs could have happened, people who might have seen something. If what Ada said was true, I could finish him. And I decided then, staring at that list, that I wouldn't just finish him. I'd make sure the whole web came down with him. Rain hammered the city that night, the kind that turned streets into slow rivers and blurred headlights into glowing smears. I sat in my car outside St. Luke's Hospital, watching through the wipers as people hurried under umbrellas. Somewhere inside, the chief was probably pacing his office, already planning his next move. In my pocket was a note I'd scribbled after Ada left, licensing board payoff evidence. I didn't have much to go on, only her word and my gut. But my gut had been right before, and I wasn't going to waste this lead. Step 1, find the mule. From what I'd pieced together over the years, the chief never moved cash himself. Too risky. He had someone else, a mid-level admin named Kolajai, whose job was to deliver packages to board members. I'd seen him once or twice during my late-night pickups for Ada, a small man with quick eyes who never stayed in one place for long. Through Sada's network, I learned Kola's routine. Most evenings around 7 p.m., he left the hospital with a plain black briefcase, got into a gray Toyota, and drove to a little printing shop on Atticunnel Street. Sometimes he came out empty-handed, sometimes not. Printing shop? I thought. Maybe step 2, follow the trail. 2 nights later, I parked down the block from the shop, hood up, pretending to tinkle with my phone while rain dripped from the eaves. At 7:23, Cole arrived, briefcase in hand. He stepped inside. 10 minutes later, a different man, older, bald, wearing a navy raincoat, left with what looked like the same briefcase. He didn't take a cab. He walked. I followed, heart pounding, keeping my distance. The rain made it easier. His destination? An apartment building in a quiet part of town. I watched him buzz an upstairs unit, wait, then disappear inside. The next day, I visited the printing shop as a customer. Inside, it smelled of paper and glue. An older woman sat at the counter. I asked for business cards, making small talk, scanning the shelves. In the back corner, near the binding machine, I saw them, 3 identical black briefcases stacked neatly. So that's how they did it. Swapped the cases in public, each with paperwork on top and cash hidden underneath. I didn't take one. I wasn't ready to get caught with a handful of marked bills, but I took photos, and I knew where to find them now. Step 3, push too far. I made my move the following week. My plan was simple. Intercept Cola, grab 1 briefcase, get proof of the money, and leak it before they could spin it. I parked closer this time, engine running. At 7:19, he appeared, just like before. Only this time, when he stepped into the shop, 2 other men in dark jackets followed him in. They weren't there the last time. Something in my stomach twisted. I waited, telling myself they were just customers. But when Cola came out again, he didn't have the briefcase. And the 2 men came out with him, one scanning the street like he was looking for something. For someone. Me. I ducked low, pretending to search for something in my glove compartment. They started walking my way. I felt the air in my chest go tight. My hand slid toward the gear shift. Then one of them tapped my window. Lost, friend. I forced a smile, waiting for someone. The other one bent slightly, peering in. Your name's Ton, right? My stomach dropped. Don't think so, I said lightly. They smiled at each other, a slow, dangerous smile. Then the taller one leaned in and whispered to the glass. The chief says you should stop digging. The other added, or we'll put you where no one can find you. Then they walked away like they just discussed the weather. I didn't follow Cola that night. I drove straight home, every headlight behind me making my hands twitch on the wheel. I locked my door, checked the windows twice. For the first time since it started, I felt small. Not angry, not righteous, just small. They'd found me easily. They knew my name, my face, my habits. If they wanted to, they could make me vanish. And that's when the fear set in, not the fear of dying, but the fear that if they silenced me now, everything I'd endure would be for nothing. The chief would stay untouchable. Ada would keep her white coat. The web would tighten. That night, I barely slept. I kept imagining footsteps outside my door. My lowest point wasn't losing Ada. It wasn't even the break-in. It was realizing that I was one bad decision away from disappearing without a trace. The next morning, I called Saad. My voice was hoarse. I'm done playing defense. I told her, if I keep waiting, they'll bury me. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, then we hit them hard. I know someone on the board who hates the chief. If you can get them proof of the cash payoffs, they'll blow it up from the inside. My pulse steadied. Then we get the proof. I didn't know yet how, but I knew one thing. If this was going to end, it would end on my terms. 2 days later, the rain stopped, and the city baked under that thick, heavy heat that makes tempers short. I'd spent the last 48 hours planning, not just a hit, but the hit. No more waiting for them to make a move. No more half measures. Sada's contact on the licensing board, an older man named Mr. Alyamide, had agreed to meet, but only if I brought him something undeniable. Not rumors, not photocopies. Something that would hold up in court. Something that would force the board's hand even if they were scared of the chief. That meant I needed one of those black briefcases. And this time, I wasn't going to follow from a distance. I was going to take it. Step 1, predict the drop. Cola was a creature of habit. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, same time, same shop. But the biggest drops, Saad told me, happened at the end of the month when the chief needed to settle with certain board members before they met. The end of the month was 2 days away. Step 2, be invisible. I borrowed a motorbike from a friend who owed me a favor. Helmet on, dark glasses, delivery bag strapped to my back. I looked like 100 other riders weaving through Lagos traffic. That Friday evening, I parked across from the printing shop, pretending to scroll through my phone. The shop's lights flickered in the dusk. At 7:18, Cola arrived with a briefcase. Right on time. Step 3, take the shot. When he came out again, briefcase in hand, I rolled up beside him on the bike like I was about to make a delivery. Then, quick as a strike, I snatched the case and gunned the throttle. He shouted, stumbled forward, but the crowd and traffic swallowed me before he could even start running. I didn't stop until I was 3 neighborhoods away. In a quiet back alley, I opened the case. On top was a stack of documents, hospital supply invoices. Beneath that, neatly bundled in brown paper and rubber bands, was cash. Thick stacks. I peeled one open just enough to see the face of the bills. Fresh. Sequential serial numbers. And tucked into the last bundle, a small envelope with 3 names written in blue ink. I recognized 2 of them as board members. The third was a name I didn't know yet. Step 4, deliver the blow. That night, I met Alyamide in the back of a shuttered cafe. He was lean, with a face that looked like it had seen too many disappointments. I placed the briefcase on the table, opened it, and stepped back. He stared at the contents for a long moment. Then he reached in, lifted the envelope, and read the names. This, he said slowly, is enough to destroy him. Then do it, I said. The next morning, it began. Anonymous leaks to the press. Whispered stories in the board's private channels. Photos of the briefcase and its contents. Copies of the names. By noon, hashtag Dr. Gate was trending again, but this time with pictures of the chief's closest allies and captions like bought and paid for. By evening, the hospital had announced an emergency review of leadership. But I wasn't done, because one thing still bothered me, that third name in the envelope. I finally tracked it down through an old friend in the legal registry. And when I saw it, my jaw tightened. It wasn't a board member. It wasn't a donor. It was a politician. Someone with enough power to bury every investigation if they wanted to. If the chief went down, this politician would go down too, which meant they'd fight like hell to protect him. And if I was going to win, I had to be ready for the fight of my life. That night, as I loaded every piece of backup evidence into a small backpack, I told myself, tomorrow I end this Morning came heavy with heat and tension. By 8 a.m., every news outlet was running the same headline: State Medical Board in crisis. Evidence of payoffs leaked. The chief had gone silent. No press statements, no public appearances, which told me one thing. He was scrambling, and if I knew him, he wouldn't just be fighting to save his job. He'd be fighting to keep himself out of prison. I didn't wait for him to come to me. I walked straight into the lion's den. The State Medical Board was holding its emergency session that day. It wasn't public, but I made sure I had an invitation, courtesy of Mr. Alyamide, who had told the board I was an essential witness. When I entered the boardroom, the air was thick. Suits everywhere. Tense faces. At the far end, the chief sat with his lawyer. Ada was beside him, her hands folded, eyes down. I took my seat opposite them. My backpack, with every single piece of evidence, sat at my feet. The chairwoman opened the meeting. Mr. Tunn, you have submitted documents and recordings alleging fraud, plagiarism, and bribery involving Dr. Oladipo and Dr. Ada Okonkwo. Today, you will present your case in full. I stood, unzipped my bag, and placed everything on the table. The scholarship form where Ada swore she had no financial support, dated the same week I'd paid her lab fees. Bank statements showing every transfer I'd made. The side-by-side plagiarism proof of her research paper. Photos of the briefcase and its cash bundles. The envelope with the 3 names. The room was dead silent as I spoke. I didn't shout. I didn't gloat. I just told the story, the long nights, the 2 jobs, the promises, the betrayal. And then I told him what Ada had told me in my kitchen, that she'd personally seen the chief deliver those briefcases to board members. At that, Ada's head snapped up. I never, she started. You did, I said softly, locking eyes with her. And we both know it. The chief's lawyer tried to object, but I had saved my knockout punch for last. I slid a small USB drive across the table. This, I said, is security footage from the printing shop. Last Friday, it shows Kola Ajayi picking up the briefcase, and the exact moment I took it. The footage also shows him handing an identical case to the man in the navy raincoat, a board member sitting in this very room. A ripple went through the room. All eyes turned to a man on the left side of the table, whose face had gone the color of spoiled milk. The chairwoman looked at the USB like it was a live grenade. If this is authentic, she said slowly, it will be submitted as evidence to the state anti-corruption unit. It's authentic, I said, and there are backup copies in 3 different locations. Try to make them disappear, and they'll go straight to the press. That broke them. The chairwoman called a recess. Half the board members left the room to make frantic phone calls. The chief stayed put, his eyes fixed on me. You think you've won, he said quietly, so only I could hear. I know I have, I replied. He leaned in, his voice low and dangerous. You just don't know what it's going to cost you. I smiled, small, tired, but real. Less than it's going to cost you. 2 weeks later, the headlines were everywhere. Chief Medical Officer resigns amid corruption probe. State Medical Board members suspended pending investigation. High-profile bribery case expands to political office. Ada's license was placed under review. Without the chief's protection, her plagiarism and scholarship fraud were no longer oversights. Saad and I watched the news together in a small roadside cafe. She slid a cup of tea toward me. You did it, she said. I shook my head. We did it. That night, I went home, set my dented lunchbox on the counter, and opened it one last time. The stickers, each one a reminder of a shift worked, a bill paid, a sacrifice made, were still there. But now, instead of feeling like a list of losses, they felt like proof. Proof that I had been more than a stepping stone. I picked one sticker at random, Ada's anatomy flashcards, and peeled it off. I stuck it to the inside of my front door. Every time I walked out from now on, I'd see it, not as a memory of what I'd lost, but as a reminder of how far I'd come. And somewhere in the city, the chief was waking up every day knowing that the man he'd tried to bury had built the very shovel that dug his grave.